So our students get to work with Nikhil tomorrow as well in some workshops on how to be a student advocate, especially because a very key part of the Challenge Success reform process is listening to student voices. There must be at least 2 students on a Challenge Success team, and those students are included as equals with the adults, helping to figure out what the problem is at the school and helping to figure out the solutions at the school. So we're going to call Dan and Nikhil out, and I'm going to introduce again Dr. Madeline Levine, clinician, co-founder. She's a New York Times best-selling author of The Price of Privilege and Teach Your Children Well. And I should, yeah, clap for that. That's good. And I should let you know, too, that we do have books on sale outside the auditorium if you're interested in Dan's books and Madeline's books and a whole bunch of books out there. So we appreciate even though Dan said you don't have to read the book, but he would still like you to buy the book. So just, we want you to take out your phone now and turn it on. And what we're going to ask you to do, if you haven't already done so, is to text your role to 22333. If you're a student, you're going to text CS Student. If you're a parent, you're going to text CS Parent. And if you're an educator, you're going to text CS Educator. If you're not in one of those categories, just pick one and text that in. So take a minute to do that. This is the time in the program, and you've heard from Dan, you've heard from Nikhil, you are excited and willing to make a change, you're motivated, you know there's a problem. We're going to ask questions because they activate learning. We're going to follow Dan's advice. And we want to help you leave with concrete research-based strategies to deal with the everyday scenarios that are going to come up with a student in middle school and high school in a fast-paced world. So if you were here last year, you kind of know how this works. We're going to ask a question, and you're going to turn to a partner, and you're going to talk about the answers to the questions. We're going to give you some limited answers. And after about 1 to 2 minutes, this is a quickie, you're going to text in the answer that you want, and we're going to look at the results live. So it's kind of like live TV. It's very exciting, a little nerve-wracking. Are you nervous? Are you okay? Everyone okay up here?
We're good.
And then we're going to talk about it. Okay? So it's really important that when you talk amongst yourselves for a minute or 2 minutes, when I say it's time to stop, you have to kind of come on back, or we'll be here till midnight. And we can't do that because sleep is important and we need to go to bed. Okay, so the first question is called Test Redo. And I'm going to read more words that are on the screen, but the screen's going to help you remember, okay? So you have your 8th grade daughter's teacher has a revision and redemption policy, which is something we talk about in Challenge Success, by which students can retest, take the test again, and get a higher grade. And the revised grade becomes the final grade. Okay, you got it? You get to take the test again, and that grade becomes your final grade. So your daughter got a B+ on the test, and she feels too busy to retake the test. And besides that, she's pretty okay with her grade as is. Your spouse wants your daughter to try again. Your spouse says things like, you should always shoot for an A if you have a chance to get one. And you don't want the teacher to think you're lazy, do you? You're the parent, you're torn, you don't know what to do. Now, you are going to vote as if you are the parent. So students, what would you do if you were the parent? Parents, what do you think the parent should do? Teachers, what do you think the parent should do? And this is what you're going to text in. If you believe that you strongly suggest that she take the test again, you're going to text in, take again. If you think that you should stay out of the decision, and it's up to her to decide, you're going to text her decision. And if you think that you should talk to the teacher about what to do, you're going to text talk, teach. There are other options. These are the only 3 that we're allowing you right now. So you're going to have to go with one of these 3. You have 2 minutes to talk to a neighbor. We're going to leave these up. Should you make her take the test again or not? Go. Okay, we are going to come on back. Come on back together. Finish up your thought, and you can take a look at the results. Now, this is interesting because I don't know how many of you are actually telling the truth, but this is what came out. Okay, this is how you read the charts, guys. The red means it's her decision. Let her decide what to do, and that is certainly the most popular. The educators, 93% said it's her decision. The parents, 81% said it's her decision. And interestingly, the students have the lowest percentage of saying that it's her decision, although it's still incredibly high. The next largest percentage looks like it is strongly urge them to take it again. And so you have 17%, 14%. Notice with the educators, you really don't have, what does that even say? 4? Okay, just a few little educators out there that want to push the kid to take it again. So I will tell you right now, I don't think that people are telling the truth, because I based this scenario on a family that I know, and that was not, they were not in the red. Let me just say that. So let's hear from the panelists and see what they think of this and of the question overall. And Madeline, you get the floor. You get to go first.
Well, certainly I would agree with the majority of people. It's always interesting that the educators are the most realistic. You know, one of the things that struck me about this question is, like, look, you know, whether your kid gets a B+ or not at, how old is she?
8th grade.
8th grade, so she's 12 years old. Like, this idea that you should be a straight-A student when you're 12 years old is, like, kind of crazy, because thank you.
Big applause from 12-year-olds.
Yeah, thanks to all the 12-year-olds out there. For a couple of reasons. Nobody's a straight-A student in life anyway, so you expect that there's going to be differences in grades. But 12 years old for a girl that's like wacko time. I mean, you know, it's like, right? You've noticed the boy next to you, you know, your body is an alien, you don't know what you're going to wake up to, so I actually think that it's developmentally appropriate to see ups and downs in performance for adolescents in general, actually for everybody, but for adolescents in particular. And this idea of always getting an A, I mean, sometimes it's a really good idea not to. There's much more to be learned because you're probably taking a few more risks, and yeah. So straight-A students are usually very good students and sometimes not very good learners, and so I agree with you all. Yay, yay, you all.
Dan, Nikhil, either one of you want to weigh in?
Oh, I would just agree that, yes, it's definitely the student's decision. Yeah, I would say, especially in 8th grade, your grades really don't matter. I mean, I would say that it's not going to go on your high school transcript, probably not. And even still, I just don't see it as a major factor. I would say that, yeah, just let the student decide.
Well, okay, wait, if this was a 10th grader, would the answers be different? Because we talked about that.
Yeah.
All right? So 8th grade, everyone's like, oh, the grades don't matter. It's okay. Maybe you won't get into the posh elite high school that you're applying to with a B+, which you would. But what if this was a 10th grader? I don't know. I'm just switching it up on you,
Can you
Dan.
ask it? Is it possible to ask it again?
I don't know that we can ask it again. How about, let's just show hands.
Yeah.
If it was a 10th grader, how many of you would change your answer? Be honest. Raise your hand.
Whoa.
Look at that. Look at that.
Whoa.
Look it up there.
It's quite a
That, see? We should have made it 10th grader, Jim.
Yeah,
we should have made it 10th
Well, it
grader.
depends on the class, I would say.
Okay, Nikhil says it would depend on the class. Why?
I mean, because, like, if it's, I mean, it depends on the class. Like, I would say that if it's an AP course and you really want to go to college and you want to go to this school, then it might help. But I mean, if it's not, it's an elective or a class that really doesn't matter in terms of, like, the college application, then I wouldn't.
Dan, weigh in.
Well, you know, I mean, I think that there are two other, I think that there are two other, a number of other questions here. One of them is, what's the point of grades? What are grades for?
Yeah.
And I think so that's one question that I would raise, because I don't believe in answers. I'm just going to give you more questions.
Yes, more questions.
So
Great.
one of them is, what's the point of grades? And so if this is somebody who is keenly interested, say, in becoming a doctor, and she gets a B+ in biology, that suggests to me she hasn't mastered some key biological concepts, and she actually might want to like work a little harder and retake it. Not because a B+ is a bad grade, but because she hasn't learned enough. So we have to think about what's the purpose of grades. The other thing is, and I think your question about the 10th graders is really just illuminating, is, and it's something that Madeline and I were talking about earlier today, which is a question that, I mean, at some level it's an upper middle class question, but it's a question, how much do you want to play the game? And I think that what you're seeing out there is people say, I don't want to play the game in 8th grade, but 10th grade,
Right.
got to play the game.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's the question that a lot of people are wrestling with. How much do you play the game?
Well, and we have another scenario that's going to hit on this too in a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead. Madeline.
I just want to add one piece of research to that, and that's when we see this huge jump in emotional problems, anxiety disorders, depression, substance abuse, cutting, is just about at 10th grade, 9th, 10th grade. So and we saw it here with all the increased raised hands. Now, depression is a complex thing, there's many reasons for it, but that change in attitude that people have is the beginning of the kinds of stressors that seem to be leading to a very high, especially among upper middle class and affluent kids, a very high increase, because it's like the stress diathesis theory, right? Like half this audience probably has the capacity or the genetic makeup right here to be depressed or anxious or something like that. We all have a big bunch of genetic possibilities. You make life reasonably tolerable for a kid, and they don't go into depression, even if they have that potential. But you stress them enough, and the gene expresses itself. And I would argue that the reason we see this big uptick in 9th, 10th grade and an even bigger uptick in 12th grade is because of the amount of stress. And so then you have to make the decision, weigh those two facts. It's always risk-reward.
Well, and I think so, and to kind of make this a learning moment, if you think about why a challenge success, we talk about revision and redemption policies, which is really, really important. If you take my Rethinking Assessment workshop tomorrow, we're going to talk about revision and redemption policies, because it's very, 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 very rare in real life that you will be told tomorrow you're going to have a high stakes assessment and you don't know what's on it. And you're going to have to go home and cram, and you don't have a say over how you're assessed. And by the way, you can't use any of the resources around you that you're used to using. You can't use the internet, you can't use the books, you can't use your friends, you can't use me as the teacher. And by the way, your bonus is going to depend on it. That does not happen in real life, right? And yet it happens 3 or 4 times a week with a test with kids. So challenge success is really helping schools rethink assessment. And one of the things they can do, which is sort of a low-hanging fruit kind of a change, is if you're going to offer an exam or a test, instead of passing it back with a grade, and this was a good grade, imagine when you get a C or a D or an F, and saying, that's it, that's your grade, we're moving on now. What we say is, if it's that important that you're actually assessing the learning of it, you want them to learn it.
Exactly.
Let's let them take it again, or take something like it again, or just have it retake a section on the section that they did really poorly, because you usually don't bomb the whole test, you usually bomb a section because you haven't really understood that section. So the concept behind the revise and the redo is really, really good. It's not supposed to cause stress in families, as it did in this one family that we based this on, who, by the way, was waiting to see how the audience handled it so I could go tell her. She's like, I could tell my husband then because he wasn't listening to me and this is happening. So the whole point is not to cause stress. It's actually to alleviate the stress and say to the kids, you get a redo. Because in the real world, you get a redo all the time and you get to use the resources around you. If it's that important to test it, offer a redo. But don't let it cause this kind of stress. If she's too busy and she's happy with the grade, I think the vast percentage of us all agree in this room, let it go. Good. All right. Yay, team. Moving on. So we're going to do the same thing. You got the drill down now. The next one is transcript trauma. And look, it's a 10th grader on purpose. Okay, your 10th grade son is capable and headstrong. Very important that you know this, okay? He likes a variety of subjects, and he shows great promise academically, but he has a bifurcated transcript. That means he has some A's and some D's all the way through. Some A's and some D's. When asked about the discrepancy in his grades, he makes it very clear that he won't work hard in a class when he doesn't respect the teacher, when the teacher is boring, doesn't seem to be liking her job, doesn't do her job well. Okay, so the first quarter grades come out and he has A's, B's, and D's. He likes and is inspired by and is challenged by the teachers in his classes with the good grades, but not those in the classes that he got the D's. So, you've talked to him, you've talked to his counselor, you've even talked to the teachers, and you've resorted to taking away some privileges. Semester grades come, more of the same. Now, what do? Here are your answers. You're not going to like them, but we're going to give them to you anyway. Here are your answers. Takeaway. You're going to text takeaway if you think they should take away even more privileges or some of the extracurricular activities. Okay, higher stakes. Tutor. Hire a tutor. We always put that answer on one of our questions every year. Just hire a tutor. Let go. Let it go at this point and let him deal with the consequences. Okay, 10th grade, remember that. Incent. Offer him an incentive to get the grades up. Talk amongst yourselves, 2 minutes, go. Okay, we're going to wrap it up, so make sure your votes are in. Make sure your votes are in. Aha, little bit different. Okay, so let me read it out for you. The highest percentages for every single respondent is to offer incentives. I believe Dan Pink will have a lot to say about this in a minute. Offer incentives. Okay, the lowest is take away more privileges, probably because that didn't work the first time. And then we have sort of this split between hire a tutor, which 27% of the students, 23% of the parents, and 14% of the educators, versus let it go. To look at it this way, the educators, 36%, say let it go, parents 22%, only 18% of the students say let it go and let the students suffer the consequences. Very interesting. 8th grade, wow. 10th grade, right? This is 10th grade. Dan, talk to us.
Well, you know, if you look at 50 years of behavioral science, what it tells you pretty clearly is that certain kinds of motivators, not all, but certain kinds of motivators, and this one falls into the class of what psychologists call controlling contingent motivators, or what I like to call if-then rewards. If you do this, then you get that. If you do this, then you get that. 50 years of social science tells us very quickly that if-then rewards are extremely effective for very simple things and for short-term results, right? But the same body of research tells us that for complex tasks and for anything with even a moderately long time horizon, they just don't work very well. I mean, it's not even a close call in the social science. And so, and there's so many, there's so many problems with this. I mean, one of them is that this kid, who's obviously a smart kid, is going to, he'll metabolize the incentive. So if they say, we'll give you, I don't even know what kind of incentive it is, we'll give you $20 if you respect your teacher. The next week he comes in and says, my price is up to 25. And then the next month he wants a car. And so and so the ability to metabolize these things you're on an endless cycle. It's a very hard thing to undo. If you start down this path, you can't undo it. That's one big danger. The second big danger is the message that it says. The message that it sends is that the reason that you pay attention in class is to get your $20. It's not to learn anything. It's to get the $20. And you know what? I mean, there's a time in your life when you have to get a job and you have to work and you need to get paid. But the idea that you want to have a 15-year-old say that the only reason I should pay attention in class, I should be respectful to another human being, which is the one I want to talk about in a moment, is to get $20 is, I think, a perverse and dangerous message.
Okay, hold the respect thing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Nikhil said something to me while you guys were voting. Nikhil, take it.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that in my experience, I've seen parents, considering that I went to a pretty affluent competitive high school, parents were basically bribing their kids.
Yeah.
And the tutoring is out of control. I mean, my coach would always make fun of the kids that got like hours and hours of tutoring because it was just completely unnecessary. And then I would just say that considering this student is getting A's, so he probably has some interest in some subject. So I would say push him into that kind of stuff, what he's really interested in, because you're in life you're never going to be asked to perform well on this broad number of subjects. You're going to probably find a certain number of fields, 1 or 2 or 3, in a short period of time that you're going to be really interested in. So really push them and that student to be interested in what they're doing already. So I think moving away from incentives is so important because it completely kills intrinsic motivation. It goes back to the notion of school as a game where you're just trying to get good grades just to do well. So I think we have to move away from those kind of metrics.
I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second and see what you say, Madeline. So a tutor gets the parent out of the hell that they're in with the kid because they can at least say to the tutor, I can't get through to him, maybe you can. And he doesn't respect the teacher, maybe he'll respect you. I'm just playing devil's advocate, trying to understand this tutoring number, although often it's high just for the sake of, because tutors are what you do, you hire a tutor. But the other thing I want to push back on is we just had a conversation about in 10th grade, you might have to play the game because it counts for college. So do we say to the kid, you got to play the game, and to play the game, I'll incent you? I'm trying to read why the people voted this way. So what do you think, Madeline?
Well, I think it sucks. I mean, I think... there's 2 separate issues in this for me. One is the bifurcated grades, and the other is the disrespect. And I see them as 2 entirely different issues. There are kids who are very strong in some things and weak in other things, and you and I talked a little bit. Maybe there's a learning issue with the things that he doesn't like. Maybe that's worth checking out. But I see a ton of kids who do great in one subject and have trouble with another subject. And if our system actually was a little broader so that the kid who is great with hands-on or creative stuff had as much of an opportunity to show what they could do as the kid who was great in math and physics, I think maybe you'd see less of that bifurcation. So personally, I'm not so worried about his grades. I am worried about the fact that he's disrespectful to his teacher. And so I think it brings up the whole issue of not just how you motivate kids to get good grades, but what you do about the fact if you have a child who's disrespectful and is not being motivated in any way to be more respectful. And I actually think there are consequences in the world when you're disrespectful to your boss.
Absolutely.
Right? So this idea of like he doesn't, and this may be controversial, so that's fine too.
On this stage?
Yeah, right. Us? Me? In the world, like Dan said, and I'm a writer too, like there's a lot of stuff you have to do that sometimes you really don't want to do at all. And there are changes you may have to make in what you write or how you think about something that you don't want to do. And so to assume that a kid gets to go out in the world and say, if I don't like it, I'm not doing it, they're not going to last long, not just in a job, which is sort of where all of our focus has been. They're not going to last long in a marriage. They're not going to last long in a friendship. They're not going to last long as a good parent. So personally, much less interested in the grade, much more interested in why the child's being disrespectful. You had to get a tutor up there. You didn't have to get a psychologist. We didn't have to get a psychologist, which I think would have
She's taking new patients.
That's what I've
Dan, you wanted to say.
Yeah, can I? Let me offer two quick things. One on respect, one on motivation. I have to say, my reaction to this was, I'm very much with Madeline on the idea that this bifurcated grades are a bifurcated issue. That the issue of the grades and the issue of the respect. I got to say, a 15-year-old who says I don't like a 15-year-old who's arrogant enough to say, oh, I just don't respect my teacher. I'm sorry. You know what? That teacher, the bar of disrespecting any other human being, to me, is so high. And a 15-year-old doesn't get to that, all right? So I'm sorry. And so, I mean, I feel bad about, I mean, I sort of feel like my reaction to this was so visceral. It's like, oh, it's just, to me, it's so over the line that a 15-year-old would be so arrogant to say, I don't respect another human being.
Okay, but
particularly another human being who is trying to teach me. Now, I feel a little bit like, I mean, one of my greatest fears in life is that I'm going to go and become a cranky old man. By the way, get off my lawn. But I have a problem with the lack of respect. I have a big problem with that. I have a huge, ginormous problem with that.
We hear you.
Let me, just as I would have a big problem with somebody not respecting anybody. Not respecting a friend, not respecting someone who is in your neighborhood, not respecting anybody. I just have a, but let me offer a kind of a solution here, and I think it goes to the incentive, and I think it goes to motivation, and it's this. When we look at things like if-then rewards, the problem with if-then rewards, there's a little bit of a head fake going on if we talk about money, okay? The problem isn't, if you offer your kid 25 bucks, the problem isn't the money, all right? The problem is that if-then is a form of control, all right? You're controlling someone else's behavior. And people don't do, the only thing that people do people have two reactions to control. They comply or they defy. But neither one is the result that you want. You want somebody to be fully engaged. And so I think that a technique, and let's go therapeutic here with Madeline by my side, a technique that one could enlist here is something, it's some interesting research. Basically, the gist of it is this. When people have their own autonomous, intrinsically motivated reasons for doing something, they're more likely to do it. So how do you surface that? And there is a technique in what's called motivational interviewing to do this. And basically it's this. You could go to this kid and say, whatever his name is, Nikhil, you know, you can go to this kid and say, you know, so we got a problem here. Nikhil, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 meaning no interest at all, 10 meaning I'm all ready to do it right now. On a scale of 0 to 10, how ready are you to begin considering respecting your teachers a little bit more and and being a little bit more engaged in the class? On a scale of 1 to 10, sorry. Scale of 1 to 10. 1 meaning not ready at all, 10 meaning I'm ready right now. Now, Nikhil is low, all right? Let's say he's a 2, or let's say he's a 3. Let's say he's a 2, all right? He's a 2. He says, on a scale of 0 to 10, I'm a 2. Motivational interviewing would suggest to you the following follow-up response, which is this. Nikhil, why didn't you pick a lower number? Now, that's the interesting maneuver right there. Why didn't you pick a lower number? And what happens there is that Nikhil has to say, why are you a 1 and why are you not a 1? Why are you
why are you a 2?
Why are you a 2 and not a 1? And he will say, well,
paradoxical intention.
Well, it's probably, I'm going to have bosses who I'm not going to respect, and I maybe need to learn this. And well,
Not so bad.
maybe they're not so bad after all. And well, it is perversely and deeply obnoxious for a 15-year-old to be so arrogant.
We're hearing that.
And so, and the point of all that is that what you do there is that's not a form of control. It's a form of motivation, but it's not a form of control. So what's happening there is that Nikhil is surfacing. It's very faint right now, but it's present. His own autonomous, intrinsically motivated reasons for doing something, and there that you have something to build on motivationally.
I think it's great. I want to push back just a little bit, and then we'll go on to our last texting questions. Actually, it's 2 more. There are crappy teachers out there.
Absolutely.
Not in the audience. Just saying that. There are crappy teachers out there. There are teachers who give busy work. There are teachers, when I shadowed kids in high school, I had to pinch myself to stay awake. I was dying, okay? So I feel for the kid. I really feel for the kid. Now, we didn't say that he was being rude or obnoxious. We just said he wasn't working for these teachers. So I feel for the kid, because when you have crappy teachers, more than one especially, going through and sitting through high school where you have no voice, to Nikhil's point, is really, really hard. So, so the bigger solution that I wanted to put was, let's retrain the teachers. Let's get them to be inspiring and challenging and engaging. And I know how hard that is, because as a teacher, I know how hard it is to be inspiring and challenging and engaging to every single kid, because you've got kids with different interests, different things going on. You've got a load of 150, 175. This is tough, guys. This is not just an arrogant 15-year-old, although I hear you, and I have a 15-year-old, and I would not want her to be arrogant like this. But it's also really a tough one. It's not a cut and dry one, because it is really hard to sit there and not be inspired and not be challenged and not be engaged and to have to play the game and kiss up when really you just don't want to. So it really takes all of us working together. The teachers need to work to figure out what's going to spark this kid. The family needs to work to figure out what's going to spark this kid. Why is he a 2 and not a 1? I love that. I'm going to try that with my own kids. Not that they have bifurcated transcripts. Oh my gosh, this is being piped into grandma's house right now. But I think that the bottom line is we have to show respect. Obviously, that's a bottom line. But we also have to understand that going to high school as a 10th grader is really hard day in and day out. And one of the things we do at Challenge Success is really work on teaching for engagement, which is my other workshop that I'm offering tomorrow, and really figure out how we can get to as many kids as possible, knowing it's never going to be 100%. So I think enough said on this one. Good question, tough question. And let's go on to our next question. This question is a 2-parter. The first one is just very easy. You don't need to talk to anyone about this, okay? This is a no-talker. Is your student getting enough sleep? You are going to text. Amy, give me the next slide. Okay, you're going to text LM yes. If yes, my elementary age student is getting enough sleep. You're going to text LM no. No, my elementary student is not getting enough sleep. You're going to text MS HS yes. My middle or high school student is getting enough sleep. Or MS HS no. My middle or high school student is not getting enough sleep. You don't get to talk to your buddy about this one. Just give us your best guess. If you're a student, answer for yourself if you think you're getting enough sleep. And if you're a teacher, answer for your own age students if you think they're getting enough sleep. LM yes, LM no, MSHS yes, MSHS no. We'll give you a minute or 2 to type that in. I think the students are saying no. The parent for middle school or high school, the parents are saying not so much for either. The parents are saying no for middle school and high school, but yes for elementary school, more so than the no's. And the educators believe that, no, 65%, is that what that says? Their middle school and high schools are not getting enough sleep. And even some small percentage of their elementary school students. So let me tell you the numbers. You're not going to re-vote, but I want you to think about this, okay? We see more and more exhausted kids every day. Elementary age kids need 10 to 11 hours of sleep a night. Adolescents need over 9. If you're in middle school, you may need 9.5 to 10. If you're in high school, you need over 9 hours of sleep. If you're an adult, you need anywhere between 7.5 to 9 as well. So think about that. We didn't have you vote for as adults. Okay, knowing that, knowing what I just said, raise your hand if you would change your answer. Raise your hand. So there's some of you who didn't realize just how much sleep actually you need. But most of you are saying, we know how much sleep they need, and they're not getting it. So our next question is, what is the greatest challenge for you as a parent, a teacher, or a student for getting enough sleep in your home? Now, if you're a teacher, you're talking about the greatest challenge for your students. If you're a student, you're talking about for yourself. If you're a parent, you're talking about for your kids. What's the greatest challenge for getting enough sleep in your home? Here are your answers that you're allowed to choose from. Schoolwork, you text schoolwork. Social media, you text social media. TV or video games, we're putting those in the same category, and we're going to say television as the text. Overscheduling, so you're going to text overschedule. That's overscheduling with extracurriculars. And no challenge, meaning no challenge, my kids are getting enough sleep. Now you can talk briefly to your friends and then vote. Let's come on back together. Come on back together. Finish those thoughts. Aha. So, if you are a student, the biggest chunk is saying it's schoolwork that's preventing me from getting enough sleep, followed by overscheduling, followed by social media, and a tiny bit of TV, video games, and no challenge. If you're a parent, it's kind of evenly split between schoolwork, overscheduling, and no challenge, which is interesting, but I'm thinking maybe those are the elementary school parents who said that their kids were getting enough sleep. And then if you're an educator, notice that the schoolwork is 20% and the overscheduling is 57%. Not a whole lot of no challenge on that one. So, thoughts? Nikhil was just admitting something to me.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get that much sleep in high school. I mean, we had to wake up, 6:30, catch the bus at 7, classes at 7:30, you leave school at 2:30, track practice or running, whatever it might be, you leave at 5:30, and now you're like exhausted, ready to just pass out. And the last thing you want to do is do anything with school. I mean, for me, I got a lot of stuff done in school. In classes and other stuff. But
you were doing your homework in someone else's class.
That's not exactly the best influence.
You don't have to incriminate yourself. It's okay.
But no, I mean, I had like free periods or even like lunchtime. I think those were ways to get stuff done if I needed to. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting that social media, at least for the students, wasn't as much of a problem. Yeah. I saw a lot of kids, they were just on Facebook, just mindlessly browsing for hours on end. And just like I was mentioning in my talk before, these kids were so sleep deprived. Some of them had, you shouldn't, at 15, 16, 17, you should not be pulling all-nighters. Like, at any age, you shouldn't be pulling all-nighters. Like, these kids were, they were coming to school with Red Bull and some kind of energy drink, and that was their breakfast. And there was, you could see the effects of that over time. So yeah, I think a lot of it was schoolwork, some of it was social media, and then there were a lot of kids, if you're coming home at 2:30 and you're not doing anything else, I mean, there shouldn't be any reason you should be able to get to sleep at a certain time, so.
But most kids are really overscheduled. What we're seeing is 56%, 30% are saying too much going on. By the time I get home, like you said, you're exhausted. Imagine all of us after a full day of work coming home, all I want to do is sit on the couch and watch, Modern Family. But these guys have hours of homework on top of that full day that started often earlier than an adult day starts, because that's how schools are often set up. So, Madeline?
The one thing that's missing from this, I think, is the fact that kids' natural sleeping cycle bears absolutely no resemblance to the school day.
Good.
Right? So in adolescence, there's what's called a phase shift, which means that the adolescent's real time to go to bed is 11, 12 o'clock, and their real time to go to school should be 10 o'clock. And that's why they sleep a lot in class. And it's very hard to, say, go to sleep. Yeah, I mean, you can't go to sleep. Right. It does.
Actually, I don't know how hard it is for some of these people. They might be.
Right. It's like you can't go home and say, I just heard, challenge success. They said you have to go to sleep. It just doesn't work. I think the best that we know you can do is set up the conditions that are more, not less, conducive to sleep. So, there's this half hour before your kid goes to bed where the light should be low, where there should be a transitional activity. The blue light from digital stuff decreases melatonin production, so really that should be not part of your before sleep schedule. The only other comment I wanted to make about this was lately I've been going to some of the kids I see homes to watch them do homework. And so when kids say and excuse me, kids, if you don't like this, but when they say they have too much homework, it's really hard to tell what part is homework and what part is social media and what part is relaxing, and they all sort of smush together. And so I think perhaps the idea of homework being homework time would lower the too much homework some of the time.
It's hard. Because a lot of people do their homework on their computers. A lot of times you must be on a gadget to do your homework, and there are all these distractions. In the Challenge Success surveys that we do, almost 50% are toggling with Facebook or social media while they're doing their homework. And in terms of sleep, our average at the high school level is not even 7 hours. It's 6 point something. So they shouldn't even be driving a car. Literally, there are more accidents due to drowsy driving than drunk driving in the teenage years. And that's because these are high-achieving kids who are, as we see, overscheduled, busy with work, busy with extracurriculars, kind of Nikhil was saying his life. And really, they're beyond just a little bit tired. They're sleep deprived, and there's a whole lot of medical things that go along with being sleep deprived.
Right. Well, I mean, your concentration's impaired, your judgment's impaired, your short-term memory is impaired. It's not just like we're crabby old people. I take that. I get to be that. It's just that we're crabby old people. There's actually a whole bunch of cognitive deficits that go along with lack of sleep.
Deanne, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to add. What I'm curious about, I don't know if anybody knows this, is I'm curious about what the numbers that you gave, Denise, look like in other countries. Yeah. Is this an American problem, or is this?
Well, I can tell you, I just did an interview with the Korean television
Korean,
network.
No,
she said 3 hours? Really? Ours are 4 to 5 hours of homework a night. And So in some countries, it's actually worse. In many countries, it's better. In fact, the countries that give the least amount of homework actually have kids that score the highest on the international assessment exam. So we have, you can clap for that, I guess. We have a white paper on homework where we've reviewed several major studies to show that there's really no correlation between doing homework in elementary school and academic achievement, and there's a slight correlation in middle school. There is a correlation in high school, but really it peters off after about 2.5 hours. So anything that kids are doing above 2.5 hours really doesn't have a connection to academic achievement. It goes back to sort of how much is too much. We ask the same question for extracurriculars and overscheduling. At some point, you're doing too much, and your body can't take it. You have one body that has to last you your whole life. And it's not going to work. So what should parents do? What's worked at your house? Or maybe it hasn't. Maybe I shouldn't put you on the spot like that.
You know, I think part of it is parents being aware of it. You know, there's this research, and I think it's ever so slowly changing. Where I live in Washington, D.C., and there's a very high-end suburban school district, Montgomery County, which is where Bethesda, Chevy Chase, those kinds of places are. And they just actually changed because they have a very enlightened superintendent. They actually changed their start time because of this. So I think that the tide is changing. And I think if parents know that ahead of time, like I don't look, if my kids are staying up late, especially if they're staying up late, well, doing schoolwork, I don't look at that and say, oh my God, look at my future Edison there. You know, I don't, I'm like, I know the research, and I go to sleep, you're going to be better off. You know, you're going to be better off. If you have a test the next day, you're going to be better off getting a full night's sleep so your brain can consolidate the memory than you are taking an extra hour to cram in an inefficient way. So I think part of it is parents being conscious of it, and also kids being conscious of it. I do think that there is an obligation on the part of students not to feel like an entirely oppressed class, but to say that I have some sovereignty over how I lead my life, and I can, resist certain kinds of, at least in a mild way, resist certain kinds of pressures. And, I actually think on this, the tide is slowly changing. I really do.
I mean, for sure with late starts, and there's a lot of research, and we work with our Challenge Success schools to really work on finding ways to put in late starts. Even if you can't drive the kid there any later because you're a working parent, the kids find that 1 hour at school where there's no class is time that they can do their homework, so they could actually go to bed and then wake up, get to school, and do their homework instead of staying up that extra hour the night before.
The other thing is like on anything, whether you're a boss or a parent or anything, or you're giving anybody advice, I mean, I think that you have to model the behavior that you seek. And so if parents are staying up late, I don't know how many parents do that, but I think that the bigger thing that parents
this is Silicon Valley. I just want to point that out.
The bigger problem that parents do, the behavior that they model, I think poorly, is always multitasking. And what we know is that human beings don't multitask very well. We stink at it. Our brains are not cut out to be multitasking. And so a lot of it, I agree with Madeline, a lot of it is a lot of the overwork is actually inefficiency that comes from multitasking. So if parents model the behavior of not multitasking, I think that might help a little bit.
Right. Madeline, last words?
Last word. I actually, since I always agree with Dan, I'm going to push a little bit on this one, which is I think it's very hard to change this on an individual level. And I think one of the problems we run into as parents is a lack of courage. So that my real answer to this is go to sleep.
Yeah.
That's my real answer. And I think that's a very hard thing to do when your kid has tears in their eyes and says, but my teacher's going to be really angry at me tomorrow. She said this has to be due. And so you're stuck then between the structure that surrounds your child and your own sense of what's best for your child. And I'd like to make the case that as a parent, your job is first and foremost to watch out for the safety and health of your child. And that even if the structure doesn't support that, that's your first responsibility.
And so as a parent of 3 kids, I will tell you, and this works at my house, and it's not always easy, it's sometimes quite hard, but we take the car keys away if she gets less than 7.5 hours of sleep, which is incredibly rare. She's an athlete, and she happens to know that she's going to hurt herself if she does it. She's a diver. Oh. If she doesn't get enough sleep, she can actually really hurt herself. So last week, but Mom, I'm going to fail the test. That's like the common thing. But Mom, I'm going to fail the test if I go to bed now. And I said, well, first of all, you're not going to fail because I know you, and you've already been studying for a few hours or whatnot. So fail is a relative term here. But second of all, you're driving your younger sister to school. So I would, yes, rather you fail a test than crash a car and kill 2 of my 3 children. So I wasn't taking no for an answer. I made it really clear. She went to bed. She did not fail the test, I'm happy to tell you. And we've done experiments where she's gone to bed without feeling like she's fully studied and gotten up a little bit earlier. So even though she's not getting the same amount of sleep, she's getting up a little earlier, being fresh, like you said. And we've done experiments to see how she does. And slowly it hits them Sleep is important. I will do better. I need it. And until it does, we'll be the prefrontal cortex, right? We will be the one saying, guess what? You're not driving. Go to bed.
Right.
You've got to be the parent. You've got to be the parent. So, I want to give a huge, huge thank you to our wonderful speakers and panelists. I want to thank the bookstore who's going to be selling books. I want to thank Andrew Mellons, who has been taping this. We're going to put it up on our website. Give us a little time to do that. You can show folks who weren't here the different pieces. We have a lot of things on our website, which I know you saw, www.challengesuccess.org. We have a new Do You Know coming out. We have a vodcast on homework. We have a white paper. We have 3 white papers. We have parent classes. We have frequently asked questions on videotape. We are a resource to you. You can join us on Facebook. You can join us on Twitter. We'll tweet with you. You can stay up to date on the events near you. We're constantly doing talks like this. And we'll give you some articles on parenting and effective teaching and whatnot. I want to thank you, too, because for the first time this year, we actually charged money for this event. And I was very nervous, and you people came through and helped us to underwrite the event, and it makes such a difference for us that you paid your $10, and we thank you for doing that and supporting us. And we're doing something a little different this year. If you notice, we didn't have a program where we're saving some trees. We're also not giving out a paper evaluation. We're going to send that via email. When you get it, please fill it out. Don't just delete it. We take what you say seriously so that next time we can provide what you're looking for. To all the folks on the school teams, we will see you tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. for breakfast. 8:30, not 7:30. And I want to thank everyone in the audience for joining us tonight. Each of you has taken a positive step by coming here and showing up. You're already helping us to make a difference in the lives of kids and being part of the solution. It's going to take 1,700 of us times 1,000 to make a real difference in the culture, and we're well on our way. Thank you, thank you, thank you.